Hello and welcome to Miguel Delaney's Inside Football. This is a videocast that is a complement to my newsletter. They can sign up to on the link below. And my general work for The Independent that of course explores the deeper significance behind the news cycle, the headlines, what's really going on in football right now. And also in this case maybe what should happen. Because a big theme that I think is worth discussing right now is Salah at Liverpool. Look, you all saw his miss against Manchester United. The sort of miss that would have been unimaginable a few months ago. And that ties in with how, from what I'm told, some of the internal data, and to be honest, a lot of external data at Liverpool shows that he's actually on his worst run of form since he joined the club. That's in terms of stuff like expected goal involvements, of shot volume. That this is just not the Salah we know. Now, look, obviously there is a bigger context at Liverpool. They are the champions, yes. They spent a lot of money in the summer, yes. But Arne Slot and the football hierarchy have taken a decision to very much evolve the team's approach. So that suddenly, I know a lot of other teams in the Premier League, a lot of other rival managers really hate this. They hate this description, but it means it's a team in transition to some extent. It's also a squad that people, again, it feels trivial to be discussing it in the context of football. People outside the club, don't necessarily want to talk about it now, but it is a squad dealing with grief, dealing with the passing of a teammate. That is going to have some effect. It's also going to have a football effect. Salah himself is also facing more football challenges where, if you think about it as well, in terms of that, in internal data showing his form. And this is also why this isn't kind of me, or this isn't one of those typical cases of a player saying Salah must be dropped because of form in a kind of, I suppose, very critical way. It's more about kind of the situation Liverpool are in. And yeah, so if you point to his stats never being worse while he's been at Liverpool, well, there's one very obvious reason for that as well. Because when Salah arrived in the summer of 2017, that coincided with Trent Alexander-Arnold's first substantial run of games at the club. So I think the season before, 2016-17, when Salah isn't there, Alexander-Arnold plays 7 Premier League games. That next season, he plays half the Premier League games. So obviously he's beginning to develop his role. And that, of course, is such a distinctive role where he and Salah had maybe the most defined right-back, forward, wide player, whatever you want to call it, relationship since Gary Neville and David Beckham. And the way one played obviously shaped the way the other played. And this is particularly true for Salah in the space it created for him. Now, so just on its own terms, I just taken that basic principle. Salah is playing without his partner in some ways, you would say. The player that released him. That, and even aside from what that's done for Salah himself, it's changed the very gravity of how Liverpool play. Frimpong, who's been one of, I would say, Liverpool made 6 major signings in the summer. One of them is now injured in Leone, and he did look encouraging. But beyond that, it feels like of those signings, the only one that's adapted in any way is really Ekitike. And Frimpong and Kirkage, obviously, they haven't yet. The fullbacks are so key to the system. But that has just meant that the gravity of the team has changed, and also the current team isn't working as you would expect it to. And there is another theory I know that's been expressed around the club, which is that basically this is essentially a post-Salah team. It's a team built for when Salah leaves that still has him in it, which is going to create tensions. And I do actually think those tensions are potentially, I'm talking about purely football tensions here, not like necessarily, between the players, but that's still manifested in interesting ways, I'd say. Like Salah, who's become, I would say, quite vocal on social media, or increasingly vocal on social media over the past few years. You can look at the way he's almost called out some of these kind of general fan accounts, not to disparage his former teammates who've left the club, people like Darwin Núñez, because as he would put it, as Salah did put it, they're champions. And Liverpool now currently look some way off that level. But how much that is connected to the fact that Salah he's one of many individuals not performing. But of course, He's the most prominent individual. He's been the star of the club over this modern era. And of course it ties into something else that's very tactical and technical, which is that, and also related to the very chemistry of the team. I mean, look, much has been made of how when Slot came in, Salah almost had this kind of tactical pact with him, basically, right? If you don't expect me to work back, in the modern game now, forwards have to work harder than anyone because it's all about pressing. But yeah, the view was that if Salah isn't expected to do the work of others, he will return it by offering numbers that make a massive difference. That happened last season. It's not happening this season. And when you're in that sort of situation, then you're asking about well, should the pact stand? Does that mean Slot has to think about things anew? And it does feel we're at the point now where we have to talk about potentially whether a player as good as Salah needs to be dropped or needs to be changed at Liverpool, at least while they get through this period. And it is a crisis now because it's 4 defeats in a row. Whether they have to think about something different, because look, like the chemistry of the team obviously doesn't work. And again, this fits into a bigger context where, again, I've spoken a lot on these videos and did one specific video about it. You can have a look at it in the archives and on the links beside the video about how we're now in a post-Guardiola era in the Premier League. And basically the very defined positional game systems are becoming more fractured. And clubs have been looking to the next solutions. That did cause what's evident now, a massive shift in the Premier League, particularly in the summer, where finally squads had a chance to work in pre-season in a way they don't during the season. So they made quite distinctive tactical decisions. Many clubs focused more on set pieces, and not just set pieces, but a more direct way of playing. Liverpool went the opposite way and focused more on individual talent and trust in individuals because they think that can bring them to higher levels of creativity and maybe higher levels of the team. And I think there is logic in that, obvious logic. I mean, we are talking about some of the most intelligent people in football here, to be fair. Liverpool have been one of the best run clubs in football. But it takes a bit of investment. It's also dependent on individual form. It's more dependent on individual form than purely systems games, because so much is based on what single players can do and also the sort of the context they're in. So suddenly Liverpool are really, I would say, disproportionately suffering from the fact that yes, a lot of these players haven't adapted yet. I mean, Wirtz has been pointed out as an obvious example because of the difference in physicality and physical intensity between the Premier League and the Bundesliga. Obviously, Isak is still, I don't think just coping with the lack of a pre-season, but or the lack of a proper pre-season because he didn't get to work with his new team, but also just maybe the weight of what it took to go to Liverpool. Then obviously the fullbacks are having to succeed, Andy Robertson and Trent Alexander-Arnold. So you put all that together and you can see why it doesn't work. And of course, the biggest individual of all is Salah, who's maybe, despite Wirtz and Isak having to adapt to new clubs, Salah's almost facing the biggest change because everything he's used to at Liverpool is now kind of gone. The front line, he's played in two different front lines. The initial famous one with Firmino and Mane, that obviously went, and now the later one with Nunez and tragically Jota and Cody Gakpo, who, I mean, actually, to be fair, has generally been on good form, but in terms of finishing, he could have won that game on his own, I suppose, against Manchester United, and we might be having a different conversation had he taken some of those chances. But that's what happens when individual form is lower. You miss chances. It does come down to inches. These aren't just processes. There is psychology here. There's actually that old-fashioned principle almost of getting over the line. And because Liverpool aren't getting over the line now, it is creating more doubt. It's creating more. It essentially means the team isn't clicking in the way it should. There are more gaps in that team, and that is very true around Salah, and it's been another striking element about him. I said it in a previous video as well. So many games now, I find him almost he's on the fringes of the game and looks more like a traditional winger, but obviously doesn't play like a traditional winger. And I do feel we're at a point now where Slot has to make a big, if temporary, decision just so Liverpool can get through this. And then once they settle, once players find form, then you can kind of look at things anew. But they've got big issues and none bigger than with their biggest star. So thank you. If you like the discussion, please like, subscribe, leave comments, and thanks. I'll see you again soon.